Hello, I am back. I am finally risen after COVID. I've gotten the feedback from you guys that you like when I just pick a video on a more relational topic and talk about my thoughts on the psychology of that subject. And this morning I found the perfect video to talk about today. The video is titled Storytime of How I Decided I Can No Longer Be Friends with People Who Make Way More or Way Less Money than me. And I went into this with an open mind because personally I have had some issues around generosity not being reciprocated in friendships in the past. But after watching it, I'm feeling a little bit more conflicted about the topic, and I would actually love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. Without further ado, let's react.
So basically, I took a trip with a former friend. We're no longer friends because of this and then some other things that kind of happened, like surrounding this particular incident. But so we start looking at Airbnbs, and I'm seeing some, I'm sending some. There's good options. I finally found one that I really loved. I'm like, oh, she's gonna want this one. So I send it, and she's like, oh, I love this one. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I'm booking it. So I book it. I book it right away. I didn't really care what she had to say. It's like, I'm booking it because I've had situations in the past where if I'm looking at Airbnbs, like if you really don't jump on it, sometimes they just go away, and then you have to settle for something that's not as good. And so I wasn't really willing to do that. So I booked it. And then her like kind of joking, kind of not joking response to me was, wow, you're stressing me out, or something along those lines, like you're stressing me out. And it was just like, I was kind of off put by that comment, first of all, because like, I actually feel like I'm making it really easy for you, but okay.
Yeah, so this part is interesting because I do understand wanting to like jump on an opportunity when it comes to Airbnbs. I understand they do kind of flee quickly. At the same time, I find myself a little bit conflicted between two things. One thing is that I really wouldn't book something, especially something very expensive, without making sure that the other person is okay with it. And the other thing is, it kind of sounded like her friend switched up a little bit. Like at first said that she loves it, that it's great, and then switched to you're stressing me out. And, even if that is true, if somebody is stressing you out, there's a nicer way to go about it. There's a nicer way to say it. At the same time, I'm like, I don't really want to like police how people communicate to their friends. But if it were me, I would definitely have felt a little bit off-put by a friend saying that when I'm, trying to be proactive about planning something. But let's keep going.
Okay. And I think maybe she was stressed out because it was out of her price range. Whatever, like.
So I see in one of the comments, the content creator of this video confirmed that it was a $5,000 Airbnb. Yeah, I think if your friend is uncomfortable with getting such a pricey Airbnb, then it isn't really whatever. It is something that should be pretty thoroughly discussed beforehand.
Situations in the past, like with her, she knows that I'm so overly generous, always pay for dinners, and like always like just go out of my way to like show love in that way, you know what I mean? And so like I think she knew like I didn't really expect her to split it with me. I don't know where her actual stress was coming from, but I responded to her like, you know what, don't even worry about it. Meaning like, I got it. Don't even worry about it.
So that is sweet and that is generous. At the same time though, it is still important to make sure that your friend is comfortable staying in that place. It's not just a matter of can they afford it? If you're going to pay for it, that brings issues of its own that the friend has to be comfortable with. For instance, some people might not be comfortable, receiving such a generous gift, either because of previous relational traumas, emotional blackmail that they experienced growing up, or other reasons, or just feeling like they don't want to owe you. There are a lot of different psychological reasons why a person still might not want to book a very expensive Airbnb, even if you're the one paying for it all. So, just something to consider. I think in general, if you're going to give somebody like a very over-the-top act of generosity, it might be worth checking in, like, are they comfortable with it? Because if they're not, and you're still doing it, that kind of begs the question, who are you doing it for? There's like that video running around of Taylor Swift when she won her award recently, dragging Lana Del Rey up with her, because I guess she was also a contestant for the same award. I'm not very in the loop with the stuff. But that video also made me really uncomfortable because Although yes, like on the surface level, it is a very sweet gesture to want to like pull your friend up, to want to bring them into the spotlight with you. But if somebody's feeling uncomfortable, especially if, you know, the attention is on the fact that they just lost this award, it could be really distressing for them to suddenly accept this act of seeming generosity. And so generosity can't really be at the expense of the other person's comfort, because then it's not really doing a pro-social act, it's more doing it to seem altruistic.
I didn't really think that she wouldn't worry about it. I figured like she would eventually come back and say like, oh, like, you know, I can't really afford to split it with you, but I'm willing to pay, like, or like get all your food and drinks while we're on this trip or whatever.
This part I do completely disagree with. So if you're going to give somebody a present or be generous with somebody, it cannot have strings attached. It cannot have all these different assumptions of like, oh, well, I'll get this $5,000 Airbnb, but you get all my food and drink. Because if that person couldn't afford more than their budget for the Airbnb, you're not really doing them a favor getting something more expensive. They're still going to have to pay more than they would have if you'd stayed within your budget by paying for all your food and drink. And also, it sounds very transactional, like I'll get this big ticket item and you get all of these, whereas gifts in general need to be given with this attitude of complete selflessness, of I'm giving you something that I do not expect back in return. When I give a gift, that's the mindset that I try to go into. Like, this is something that I'm never going to see again. This is money I'm never going to see again, time, energy, whatever it is. I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart to make this person's life better. The moment you start to attach all these strings to it, and the moment you start to assume that that person owes you, that's when it becomes a form of emotional blackmail. And I think I got a question on one of my videos recently. I can't quite remember, but I think it was on my video where I was talking about money mindsets and how to give more generously and how to not feel like you're losing. The key piece to giving generously is it has to be something that you genuinely want to give that person. It can't be something that you're sort of convincing yourself you need to do in order to get something in return. It has to be something that you truly would do if you got nothing back in return. A few weeks ago, I was thinking like, you know, I'm in a better place financially in my life now than I was a year ago, for instance. I want to start giving back. And when I was thinking about ways to give back, there were certain things like donating to charity that I was like, well, you know, I'm not like that stable. Things aren't that good that I would feel good about that right now. What I would feel good about are things like getting my grandma's groceries, getting her a bouquet of flowers while I'm at it, sending my friend a birthday present across the world. Those are things that I would feel really good about, investing in the people in my immediate circle that I care about, sort of spoiling them. And then there are other things that I just don't feel comfortable parting with right now. And that's totally fine, but that's the key. You have to figure out what are the things that I'm willing to give, to be generous on, and what are the things that I'm not. And truly pour your heart into the things that you want to give generously, and don't worry about the rest just yet. Maybe further down the line you can be more generous in those other ways, but if you give with the expectation of this isn't something I want to part with, or I want something in return, it's not going to feel good, and it's probably going to create a lot of friction.
Okay, so that obviously didn't happen. When I said don't worry about it, and she's like, oh, you know, like kind of argued with me about it, and then like it was dropped, she never brought it up again. The partner never brought it up again. It was just kind of like, you got this, Kim, you got it. Okay, fine, whatever. It's not really bothering me though until we get on the trip. We go on the trip. We actually stayed where we were for an entire week, so it was expensive. The Airbnb was expensive. This is where like my final kind of straw was on the very last night. We went to dinner. I for sure got more than they did, right? Like even collectively, the two of them like got less than I did. So I was like, listen, like I'm just gonna pay for it. Don't even worry about it. Which I feel like I had done throughout the week too, but like this one hit me different because after I had paid for the last dinner of the trip, we go out for drinks, and the server comes over, brings us our drinks. I think the server was like, how do you guys want to pay? And she's like, oh, we'll split it. And I was like, ew, that is so tacky. To me, that is so tacky. And I like...
This I kind of do agree a little bit more with her on. When it becomes a pattern that you're continuously giving more and more to a person, you know, handling more of the dinners, the drinks, etc. And the other person just never kind of says, hey, I got you on this one thing, however small of a gesture, however small they can afford. I do think that gets a little tacky. I do think that gets kind of to a point where like one person's always giving and one person's always taking. To me though, as I was listening to this, what I found myself wondering the most about was, how did this friend react to the act of receiving? Were they grateful? Did they say thank you? Were they pleasant? Did they try to give back in other ways, building you up, being charismatic, all that stuff? Because that's also a form of currency. Giving emotional gifts, giving relational gifts is also very valuable, especially if somebody doesn't have financial tools at their disposal. I don't think I ever had this question answered in this video, but the whole time I was wondering, did they say thank you? Because I have been in situations where I'm always covering for a friend, and I can't help but notice that there's just never a thank you, or never even an attempt at splitting the bill. Or maybe like they left some of their money at home, they forgot to bring their bills, but they don't even try to pay what they do have on them. Something like that says a little bit more to me about the other person, if they're not even making an effort to reciprocate on an energetic level, not just a financial level. That to me is more important. You know, I don't care as much if someone can't afford to pay me back if they experience a lot of gratitude. I have this rule personally, I don't give freebies to people who are entitled. Like, sorry, like you can if you want to, but that's my rule. I don't do that. If I notice that someone is behaving entitled or trying to take from me, take advantage of me, what's the expression when they're kind of trying to sneak something by you? I don't fuck with that. Whereas if you're just a very thankful person, if it's clear that you appreciate what other people do for you, that I care a lot less about then.
I personally can't imagine like having somebody pay for the Airbnb for the entire trip, then having them pay for a dinner, and then going out for drinks and being like, oh, let's split it. Like, I know that I went wrong by telling her, hey, don't worry about paying for the Airbnb. I should have just been like, hey, why don't you just pay this amount? Or if you guys are on...
Well, I mean, maybe the real mistake there was purchasing it without her consent. Maybe the real mistake was not getting something within both of your budget, or I think like she's about to say, you know, splitting up, getting different Airbnbs. And also I think the mistake was operating under the assumption that if you do this big gesture for them, then they're gonna owe you. Because like I said, you know, that's not really the way gifts work. Gifts don't have strings attached, or they shouldn't.
Uncomfortable with, you know, the cost of this Airbnb, just go find something close to me and, you know, all good. It's no big deal. But still, just like, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Then another thing that happened too that I've thought about that makes me realize like I really have to like make sure that I'm friends with people who have it in the same way that I have it. It was her birthday's like back in like, I don't remember, like July or something, and so she had planned this trip to Disneyland, and I'm like, well, I'm paying for your ticket. I'm paying for it. My birthday was, we got back from our trip beginning of October. My birthday's like end of October. I was kind of expecting something from her, like just like anything, like, hey, happy birthday, like let's go to dinner, let's go coffee, anything. She sends me like this voice message that's just like, happy birthday, I hope you're doing well, I can't wait to celebrate with you. But like,
that is a gesture though. Like, I'm a little bit confused because she said that she was kind of expecting something, anything, and I thought this was going in the direction of like the friend didn't even hit her up or gave her just like a very perfunctory happy birthday or something. But that sounds sweet. That sounds like a sweet gesture. It kind of sounds like the unspoken part here is I was expecting for her to pay for something of mine in return. And this raises an important question because it's like, well, of course, if you're generous with people, you're going to also expect for them to want to be generous in return. It can't just be like one person's always giving, one person's always taking. And at the same time, you can't be giving gifts expecting to get things in return, because then you're the one that becomes entitled. So this is the part where I'm very conflicted. I'm like, who who was more in the wrong. Like, not that there is like one person in the wrong, one person in the right, but just like struggling with my own subjective perspective in terms of like, what do I think about this? So I would love to hear what you guys think about this in the comments, because I'm very confused, and honestly it would be helpful to hear the friend side of the story as well, because I think it kind of sounds like we're only hearing one side of what happened.
Just never like really felt like so like uncared for by a friend before, and it was just like all of these little things combined. And like, again, I know that I didn't play things very well. Like, if I wanted money from her for the Airbnb, I should have just voiced that. But like, culturally, I just feel like that's just not something that I'm about. Like, if you're stressed out about money and you don't want to pay, I'm not going to ask you for the money. This is why I cannot be friends with people who just, that income's a little bit different. Like,
I take a little bit of an issue with that, though. I think anytime we say, I can't fraternize with people of this social group or social class, that's problematic. Because like I've been sort of hinting at this whole video, people can be generous in multiple ways. It doesn't just have to be financial. Not everybody has money like that, but I thought it was interesting. She said, I've never felt so uncared for by a friend. Friends can make you feel cared for even if they can't afford to give you something. Was that voice message maybe not caring enough? Maybe there needed to be some sort of gesture, quality time spent together, actually being present with you in person. Would that have been enough? Or did it have to be something financial of like, she buys me dinner, she takes me out, she gives me a gift? Personally, I think that showing your care in emotional ways can be even more valuable than financial ways, because if you have the money, anyone can do that. Showing that you actually care for a person, showing that they're important to you, that's a completely different ballgame that you actually have to invest a lot of energy into. But people have different love languages. Some people prefer quality time, other people prefer gifts, like actual physical gifts, financial gifts. So maybe it's a discrepancy in terms of that.
It messes things up. It really does. I mean, I don't know. This is just how I feel. And don't get me wrong, too. Like, I make connections with people on way deeper levels than just money, right? But to have experiences with people, which is something that I love, like, I want to have experiences with my friends. I want to go on trips with my friends. To be able to do that, like, you kind of have to fucking carry your weight. Maybe that's just like my love language, you know what I mean? Like, my love language is spend your fucking money. If I'm gonna spend my money, you're also spending your fucking money. If we're going on a trip, we're spending it in the same kind of way, you know what I mean? So that it's like, it's not like, oh, we can't go to this place for dinner, like I can't afford it, or we can't stay at this Airbnb, I can't afford it, we have to stay at fucking Motel 8 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I can't.
Well, I do think there's also something to say about when you care for someone and when they're important to you and you want to spend quality time with them, sometimes you have to make sacrifices too. This person is talking about how when you go on a trip with somebody and you want to have these experiences with them, you have to make financial sacrifices. Sometimes you have to make emotional sacrifices in terms of there's this thing that I want, but my friend can't afford to do it. So if I want to spend time with them, if I want to have quality experiences with them, I'm maybe going to have to modify things a little bit and do something within their budget. When you're generous with other people, it needs to be completely without any sort of pretense, without any sort of assumption that they're going to be generous back. You cannot remind people that you've done generous things for them as a way of getting that generosity reciprocated, because first of all, it's not going to work, and if they're actually entitled, they're probably going to blow up on you and play the victim and make you out to seem the bad guy. What you can do instead is be freely generous in ways that feel authentic to you, in ways that don't feel like you're losing something, and then just observe. Don't ask for that money back, don't expect people to pay you back, just observe how people act. If people are acting generously to you in all sorts of ways, not just financially, make a note of that and say, okay, this is not a person trying to take advantage of me. This is not a person that's entitled. This is not a taker. This is not someone trying to be sneaky on me. If they are, and if they just take the more you give, and they make absolutely no attempt at returning your generosity, I would not recommend confronting them in that moment. No, 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 because things can get very ugly very quick. But again, what do you think about this? Because that's what I really want to know. I have some really fun videos planned for you guys, so make sure to stay tuned for those. If you're not already signed up to hit the bell notification button, make sure you do that so that you get notified about new videos. See you soon.